everyone, it's Rachel from Eats by Rachel. Today I'm going to be comparing the store-bought Levain cookies you can buy at Whole Foods with a homemade recipe for the Levain cookies. And I'm going to put them to the test to see which one is better, homemade or store-bought.
Before we get into it, quick story time. I went to Levain or Levain bakery a few years back and tried out my first chocolate chip and walnut cookie from their shop. It was ooey gooey, crispy and warm, and honestly ever since I've been seeking to recreate this cookie. There are a ton of different recipes out there online for copycat Levain cookies, but I was at a Whole Foods recently and I noticed that they sold the pre-baked frozen cookies in store, and the package looked nice. It was on sale, so I was like, you know what, we're gonna take one of these bad boys home. I thought it would be fun to try making my own recipe and seeing if the homemade recipe for Levain cookies could stack up against the frozen ones. So for today's recipe, I am using one from Hijabs and Aprons on their famous Levain cookies from scratch at home. I decided to cut the recipe in half because I knew it was quite a few cookies and I didn't want to eat that many at once. But relatively simple to put together. Cream together your butter and sugar, combine your dry ingredients, and I have this fun new whisk that I was using, and then just merge together your dry and wet ingredients until just combined. And then go ahead and add in some chocolate chips and toasted walnuts. Don't go too hard on these because I found that having the recipe made it that we couldn't fit as much chocolate chips and walnuts because there's just too many toppings and not enough dough. And once your dough is all together, you can go ahead and use an ice cream scooper to make big chunks of cookie dough on your baking sheet. And the key to this is that you don't need to really roll them into nice balls or anything like that. They can be craggly and misshapen, and you bake it off for about 10 to 15 minutes. The recipe says to let the cookies cool down, but you know me, I can never wait that long, and I love when the cookies are ooey gooey and warm, so I dug in right away. Okay, now let's move on to the Levain Bakery chocolate chip walnut fully baked cookies frozen from the package from Whole Foods. So these cookies are already pre-baked, so honestly it was the simplest thing ever. They were already pre-shaped and everything. It wasn't like raw cookie dough. All you literally had to do was take the frozen cookie out and then warm it up in the oven for a couple minutes. I baked off about 4 cookies in the oven on a baking sheet, and these cookies do not spread whatsoever because they're already baked, so you don't even have to worry about spreading them out, which I did just to be safe, but no need to worry about that. And the cookies are done within 5 to 10 minutes, super simple. They're a little bit more brown than they used to be and definitely a lot warmer, and they have a ton of chocolate chips once you kind of break it open.
So I'm back with both options right here. I've got the store-bought Levain cookie and the homemade one right here. So I'm going to do a taste test to figure out which one is actually better. Right off the bat, the store-bought cookie looks a lot flatter, a lot smoother on the surface, and there's a lot less chocolate and walnuts involved, on the outside at least. My own homemade cookie is a little bit rougher on the edges. It's a little bit more craggly. It looks a little bit darker brown. There's a lot more cracks and exposed areas where there's chocolate chips and pieces of walnuts, all just kind of hanging out in one conglomerate. I would say the more composed looking cookie would be the store-bought one. However, once I cracked them open, I noticed that the store-bought cookies and the pre-packaged ones that I heated up, they have a ton of chocolate inside, but not a lot of walnuts. My cookies at home, on the other hand, they had a decent amount of chocolate to walnut ratio. First, we are going to start off with the Levain pre-packaged ones from Whole Foods. This is what the cookie looks like, so let's dig in. This is a really good classic chocolate chip cookie. Does it stand out to me as a Levain cookie? No, it does not. I've been to the Levain cookie store before. I've bought the cookie at their actual bakery, and their cookies do not actually look like this, even though this is sold by the Levain bakery brand. Really good, really sweet, very soft of a cookie, but it does not strike me as a Levain cookie. It kind of just reminds me of a classic store-bought cookie. All right, so now let's dig into the homemade cookie that I made myself. It's a little bit more craggly, so it might be more of a messy one. Immediately, I can tell that there is a lot of toasted walnuts in here, which I definitely added. So it adds a little bit of complexity to the flavor. My cookie is a little bit drier and a little bit more crumbly and not as soft. So I could see where someone might prefer the sweeter, more chocolate-forward cookie of the prepackaged one. But I really, really love toasted walnuts and I love that texture. It almost kind of reminds me of a light scone in a weird way. Ultimately, which cookie is better, the prepackaged Levain cookie or the homemade one? That is up to you, but I would say that if you're looking for a Levain cookie, I think the homemade one mirrors it more closely. Because if you buy their prepackaged cookie, it's a solid chocolate chip cookie with a few walnuts thrown in there, but it's not really an authentic Levain bakery cookie. Obviously the best is going to the Levain bakery itself in New York and picking up a warm, fresh, gooey cookie. But if you can't do that, like I can't in California, I would make your own homemade cookies if you have the time. The frozen prepackaged cookies are good, they're not really an authentic Levain cookie. So that is it for this week's video. Those are my thoughts. Let me know if you would make the homemade Levain cookie or if you would go store-bought. And I will see you all next week. Bye guys!